Welcome to this video, and we're chatting to Richard Tatty down in Australia. So another down under astrophotographer. He does a lot of YouTube videos and stuff, so he's quite well known in the kind of YouTube community. So it'd be great to get his experience and all his workshop experiences under the night sky and how he does light painting. He's quite well known for his light painting, and yeah, he's got fantastic skies. So it'd be great to chat with Richard and hear all of his stories. So as usual, links in below and stuff. I'm sure you all probably know of him by now. Yeah, and here's the chat. So, Richard, you are from, well, Australia. Is it Australia? Whereabouts Australia is it you're from, or is it
Well,
Tasmania? Because you're always in Tasmania as well.
no, well, actually, Tasmania is one of the states of Australia, but I don't live there. But I
Uh-huh.
have only just returned from a 2 week trip over there. So I spent the last 2 weeks photographing the night sky and landscape in Tasmania. It's a beautiful place because
It
it's
looks
further
stunning.
south. Yeah, so where I live is in Victoria. So Australia is a big country, and it's split up into about 7 states. And Victoria is right down the bottom of the country, but Tasmania is actually an island which is further south. It's below there. So it's probably about 1,000 kilometers south of where I live. But where I live is in about an hour and a half north of Melbourne, which is a major city in this state where I live.
Mhm. Ah, fair enough. Is it easy enough to get to Tasmania? Is there a lot of boats or
Yeah,
flights or whatever it is?
yeah. It's a very well developed place. There's a lot of people live there, but there's airports. But I took my car, so I took the ferry. It's basically an all night. Takes about 11 hours. It's an
Yeah.
all night sail, and it can be
Hmm.
rough, but it wasn't too bad for this particular journey. And
Yeah.
I've only just started editing the pictures from there in the last couple of days, and the video. I've got a video which will be coming out this week on my channel, documenting my first shoot down there at Tasmania. So I'm looking forward to
Beautiful.
that.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. It's definitely a very unique landscape down there. Like in your images, your foregrounds are always quite a unique sort of, I don't know, like wee bike or something, something just you could tell it's
Yeah,
Australian sort of thing. Is that like
yeah,
around the
yeah.
place a lot, or do you have to travel a lot around there?
Well, where I actually live is a fairly open area. It's not mountainous, whereas Tasmania, for example, is quite mountainous. Not as much as Scotland, but
Mm.
it's got a lot of mountains and a lot of ups and downs. It's got lots of beaches. It's got everything. Where I live is in inland. There's no water. There's no beaches. There's lakes and reservoirs. A lot more flat country. So I go looking for compositions, but there are a lot of farm houses and properties where
Yeah.
you can get access to some of the older machinery. And one of the good things about Australia is people don't like to throw things away, so they keep all this old stuff laying around.
Yeah,
And when
it's
I say
always
old,
old, wrecky, sort of
yeah,
old-fashioned
that's
things. It
right.
looks awesome. Yeah.
That's right. But see, when I say old, nothing in Australia is very old. The country's only 200 years old from settlement. So as far as all the old machinery, it's not as old as what you might find over in Europe or in the UK, but it's still rusty and rustic,
Yeah.
and it makes a good foreground subject to shoot at night.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful the landscape you've got, and obviously your skies. Southern sky. I've never hopefully, seen the southern skies, but yeah, I mean you've got like the Milky Way like overhead and Magellanic
Yeah.
Clouds and stuff like that. So this is your winter sort of now. Is that good for Milky
Yeah,
Way, or what's the best time in the
yeah,
southern hemisphere?
yeah, it's very good. Well, basically, anywhere in Australia is we don't have the twilight summers that you guys have, say, in northern the UK, or in Scotland, where you are. So it's always dark. We always have dark skies, even in the middle of summer. So
Yeah,
there's plenty of time, any time of the year to shoot. But the Milky Way is really good all the way from about March all the way to October. And it obviously changes orientation a fair bit over that time. But yeah, the southern skies here are amazing. We see a very large view of the Milky Way. It can be directly overhead, and it can sort of lay right across the sky
yeah,
in a very easy sort of panoramic view. at various times of the year as well, which is good. So all you need really, therefore, is a dark sky location, and you can find some really great compositions with the galactic core in a really good position to put something in the foreground, whether it's trees or buildings or mountains or lakes or whatever it may be.
Yeah. And how's the climate? I was chatting to a few weeks ago, Joel Stafford. I don't know if you're aware of his work.
Yes.
The tower photographer. Yeah, he's brilliant. And he says it's just pretty much go inland a wee bit, and then you should kind of get away from the cloud and stuff like that. Is it easy enough
Yeah.
to kind of find the clear skies? Because here in Scotland, it's pretty hard. We're on like small islands. We're always getting something off the
Yeah.
sea, but is it easy enough in Australia?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Joel lives a fair way north of where I live. He's up in, I think he's up in the top of New South Wales or up near Queensland. So it's a warmer climate where he lives. But yeah, he's right. You get away from the ocean. Australia, generally speaking, has a warm climate, so much warmer than what you're used to over there. So we don't have a lot of areas that get heavy snow here. Unless you're up high on mountains. But even then, only the Alps part of Australia, and there's not much in that, has snow all through winter. The rest of the country's dry and indeed quite hot, very hot during the summer. So it's a pretty moderate climate. You can get the tropical storms in the north of the country, a bit closer to where Joel lived, for example. But down here, we don't get that at all. And I would say, where I live, it'd be probably somewhere between 60 and 70% clear nights for the whole year.
God, that's a dream. We get maybe, a weekend here and there every month or something. And then no doubt it's
Yeah.
around when there's like a full moon. They seem to cycle perfectly. Full moon means clear
Yeah.
skies, no moon means cloud. Seems to be a perfect
Yeah.
circle just up here just now. But
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
you touched on how like warm it is in Australia. Is that not really tough to photograph? Because I mean, all the dewy, wet equipment. Is that not really tough when you get the really warm nights?
Well, see, in the Australian summer, it's not peak Milky Way season. So, I mean, you have Orion and other constellations that are out during the Australian summer, which is your winter. So I would say I do most of my shooting in the cooler months, probably between March and October. And it can get quite dewy and frosty, but it's not unmanageable. You just have a few lens warmers and just rug up and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you certainly get frosty ground surfaces and so forth, but it's not unmanageable, and certainly better than people living in Canada or places like that where it's just absolutely frozen all the time.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite hard. I mean, I've photographed in like northern Norway and that, and it's quite challenging sometimes. It's just you're constantly battling, things freezing up, but it makes it more
Yeah.
beautiful. I don't know. I kind of prefer the cold to the warm. Like now, well, this is going to like sound like terrible temperatures compared to you, but for us, like photographing noctis and clouds, we kind of like sit about, say, like the high teens at night, maybe mid-teens, and it gets kind of
Yeah.
dewy and stuff, and that's kind of annoying for us. But I guess you've probably shot in like 20 odd degrees at night, 30 odd degrees at night, and that would be
Oh yeah. Well, I've shot at 35 degrees Celsius at night, in the middle of the night,
oh,
in the Australian summer. It gets hot here, and
geez,
generally it's
oh,
not that hot during the nighttime. But if you have a really strong heat wave, and there's been a lot of those in a row, so
yeah,
we can, in Australia where I live, and I live in the southern part of the country, but you can regularly get 40-degree temperatures in the summer.
yeah,
And some of the areas in Australia, in the more central parts, I mean, it's like that for weeks on end. It's just hot, 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 which
geez,
I
oh,
don't particularly like.
yeah,
So yeah, but it's just these are the trade-offs. I mean, you have certain aspects that are good and manageable, like when it's moderate. Say, it might be mid-20s or something like that during the daytime, which is quite a moderate temperature.
yeah.
We don't get days and days on end of freezing weather, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, fair enough. I think our climate up here is getting more and more kind of just average now. We're not getting such as severe winters, and well, we're kind of getting pretty hot summers now. We just hit 40 degrees last year for like a day. That was our first ever 40 degrees in Scotland. So it's
Wow.
getting a bit,
Yeah.
it's getting a wee bit, oh, it's just global warming, just things getting warmer, just slowly. How do
Yeah.
you deal with all the like, famously in Australia you get all the bugs and mosquitoes and stuff. And we've got like midges up here, which is
Yeah.
like hell, but I'm sure Australia is 10 times worse. You have to watch where you step and stuff for snakes. How you
No,
got any
well, it's
encounters?
actually it's interesting you say that, Andrew, because that's probably the question people from overseas ask us Australians all the time. How do you cope with the wild animals? And where I live in the southern part of the country, there's no crocodiles. I'm nowhere near the ocean for sharks or anything like that. There are crocodiles up there, and I wouldn't be going too close to those. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
snakes around, but I never see them.
No.
Um,
They'll always see
Mosquitoes are
your
bad.
lights before you see them. They'll always
Yeah,
see you. Yeah.
exactly. And I also make a lot of noise. Snakes, for example, feel vibrations and they just run away. But yeah, I do go to some locations where you might find those sort of kangaroos are probably the most dangerous animal in that they run in front of cars all the time on the road. And
Yeah.
so when I'm out at night time, I always see kangaroos just about every time I go out. So they are everywhere. So if you ever hear anyone say that kangaroos are an endangered species, don't believe them.
Ah,
They are literally everywhere.
they're everywhere. Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh well, so don't watch out for the snakes and the crocodiles, just watch out for kangaroos pretty much. They're
Yep.
the ones
That's
that
right.
you'll always pretty much see, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they run out in front of the car and they just stand in the middle of the road. So it's not
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, they're a huge thing. Obviously you've seen them in the wild. I remember I was at Edinburgh Zoo here and had kangaroos and stuff, and this huge big kangaroo just started jumping like towards like us and just kind of squared off, and they're huge. Oh my God, they're
Yeah.
absolutely massive. You would not want to pick a fight with them at all. So even in
No,
the wild,
no, that's right. And they stand up on their back legs and they're very
yeah,
tall and they can be aggressive, although generally the ones I see, they just have a look and see, well, wondering what you're doing, and they run away if you
yeah,
go near them.
yeah,
But you sort of leave them alone, and they tend to stay away.
yeah. No, fair enough. Yeah, as in Scotland, we've got nothing to be scared of in wildlife here. Everyone always says, "How do you cope at night?" It's like there's nothing in Scotland to be scared of. So you guys have
Yeah,
got that sort of stuff. What was I going to say? Yeah, so your sort of photography, you're like you do a lot of light painting. Like not
yeah.
many. I've not really dabbled in it too much, and it's not a thing that a lot of people do. But you've clearly like mastered it. What about light painting is it that you just love about it? Because you do it really, really. It's not like over light painting. You can just see a big flashing light. You do it kind of obviously. I've seen your videos. You put lights quite at a good distance at different angles and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
why light painting for you?
I like the creativity of light painting. So I come from a background of photography. I've done all sorts of different styles of photography over the years, uh, and portrait photography and landscape and event photography and wedding photography. You name it. I've done all of those things, and during the course of all of those times, I've had to use lights to, whether it's flashes or whether it's stage lighting or whether it's some other studio portrait lighting. And I guess what I've done is learnt a lot about lighting. And from there, I've translated the lighting side of things, or the principles at least, into astro landscape photography, which is what I do, and you've seen on the channel. But I'm only using torches rather than flashes and big studio lights or anything like that. So, but it's still the same principles, and I like the creativity of it. So basically being able to add light into a subject to make it really pop out of the scene. And there's plenty of times when I still shoot ambient landscape foregrounds and things like that. In fact, when in Tasmania, I did that mainly just long exposure foregrounds to get some detail. But I do still like the light painting, because it just is that artistic flair that
Yeah.
I suppose, because as you know, astro landscape photography or astrophotography of any type is very technical by nature, and
Hmm.
people often get tied up in the technicalities and all the settings and all the other things. And
Yeah.
light painting is more a creative art form, and I like to be able to explore that part of the photography as well.
Yeah, it's definitely just the way you work it. It's definitely like an art piece, what you do, and you get all different angles and different. It's definitely like a whole thing, an art piece. You obviously do a lot of time lapse as well, which are phenomenal. Do you do light painting through that? Do you have a subtle light on, or do you just shoot that? Can't remember.
Yeah, sometimes I do have a subtle light. It's different in the sense that during a time lapse sequence, I need to have low level lighting of some sort that's on the whole time. So, but yeah, most of the time, if I have a foreground subject that is meant to feature into the time lapse, then I will usually put some sort of subtle light onto that to make it pop out from the rest of the scene. And yeah, I do enjoy time lapse, and I think time lapse also probably taps into that creative side again, because I also use sliders and things that give the camera some movement. And whilst that adds to the complexity of a time lapse, it also adds to the creative dynamic of the time lapse. And I've made a few, blunders along the way, like we all do, and tried
Everyone
a few
does, yeah.
things that haven't worked. Yeah, and but yeah, I do try to. I would say that with all of my photography, I really do try to emphasize a foreground subject, whatever that may be. It might be a small item, or it could be a building or something like that. But that's what I'm generally searching for when I go out to scout locations.
Yeah.
And from there, I'll work out where the night sky sort of lines up behind it,
Yeah.
and try and work the scene that way.
Yeah, I think what makes, like, say, good astrophotographers, apart from, like, say, just amateur astrophotographers, and everyone learns that, everyone obviously gets into the hobby at some point, is if you do like a landscape photography, the obviously the foreground is just as important as the sky. Even emphasize the foreground more and just have a wee bit of the night sky, and that's what
Yeah.
makes, like, the better pictures, rather than just shooting straight up of the stars. Everyone can do that. It's definitely,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
yeah,
it's true,
stuff like that.
and it is the thing. It's one of the things that I find to be hardest to work with is composition in nightscape photography, because it's obviously hard to see what's around you, and it does take a fair bit of energy to try and make the scene look the way that you imagine it should look, because it's just hard to see. Which is why I think it's really important to visit locations when there's a bit of daylight, so you can actually formulate a plan and say, well, if I stand here, I'll get that in about the right position. And, of course, as you know, then we can use things like photo pills, augmented reality, to sort of make sure we know where the Milky Way is going to be into the frame. And from there, when you come back at nighttime, it's a whole lot easier to compose the image for a foreground. And then once you're pretty confident that you've got an image well composed, then you can start being creative with the lights or whatever it is you want to do with it, rather than sort of guessing. And I know a lot of people struggle with time, so they don't necessarily get to go there in the daytime. And that can be a problem, because when you roll up to a scene at nighttime and you had never been there before, it's really hard, isn't it, to know what's in
You
front
do
of
need
you.
to
You've got to
scout.
take test shots.
Yeah, you do need to scout, because that, like, one little bit of rock that you wouldn't have seen in the dark can make all the difference. Things like that, yeah.
Yeah.
But you mainly shoot pretty much like Milky Way, but I've seen you doing like Aurora, things like that. What's your experiences with the Southern Lights, the Aurora Australis?
Yeah.
Australis, isn't it?
Australis. Yeah. Well, look,
Yeah.
my experience with the Aurora is typical frustration, because
Yeah.
we don't, where I live, we don't get as many as you would in the northern hemisphere, in the northern part of the world. Where I've just come back from, Tasmania, they get a lot there because it's a long way further south. But unfortunately, when I was there, there was a couple of nights where Aurora did happen, but there was a lot of clouds in the States. So I sort of missed out there, but I have taken quite a few, and because we're getting more auroras in this time and the next year or so, there will be more opportunities. But the lights here are good. They're predominantly different colors to what you see in the north. I think I've never seen any northern lights because I've never been to Norway or places like that. But we get lots of pinks here, green and red. And yeah, there's been quite a few recently, and I'm sure you've had them there as well. And they've been pretty good shows.
It's been getting really strong the past few. Like, I think March was really good for us here, but I think because I'm not sure your latitude down there because it's all flipped and stuff. But, like, obviously you get, as you just said, all the pinks and the reds and stuff. Like down, say, England and like the northern France, they're seeing the shows we're seeing. Obviously, we're seeing a wee bit green because we're further north, but I think because you're a wee bit, oh God, north from the south, you're
Yeah,
just seeing like the top of it, so you'll see the pinks and the reds. If you were obviously further south, you should see the greens and stuff. It's just the same. I think it's
yeah,
just you're just that far away, so you're just like seeing what England's seen for the Northern Lights. It's just like the tops of it, which is awesome.
yeah,
And hopefully, if it gets
yeah. I think you're
strong,
right. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. When I was in
you,
Tasmania a couple of years ago, I saw a really big aurora, and there was lots of green in that one.
yeah, yeah. So you'll just be seeing the top of it. So these latitudes, it's good because you see Northern Lights differently than you would like Norway or Iceland because you're seeing it on the horizon. So you're seeing the layers. You can see like the pink and then the red and then the green underneath it. So
Yeah,
you see like a wall of it, which is quite. It's a
yeah,
cool way of seeing it. But can you see like the proper like reds with the naked eye? Some nights there and like the pillars.
yeah. Well, yes, you can, but it has to be a big, bright one to see any naked eye color. You
Yeah,
can certainly see the beams. The one in Tassie that I saw a couple of years ago, I could definitely see the pink and the
yeah,
green with my naked eye.
brilliant.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, it's very addictive as well when you get it because it doesn't
Yeah,
happen all the time and it's quite a hunt to get it. So when you get it, it's just it's so good. It's very very addictive. Is there
yeah.
anything else in the night sky down there that's different? I know moonrises are all opposite down there for you. It's
Yeah, well,
upside
the
down
sky
moon and
moves.
everything.
Yeah, the sky moves in the opposite direction. Well, it moves from east to west, but
Yeah,
our stars rotate through the northern sky. So for example, the moon and the sun are in the northern part of the sky rather than the south where you are.
yeah,
Um, and the we have the Southern Cross, which is a magnificent constellation here
yeah,
in the southern hemisphere, and the Magellanic Clouds,
yeah,
which are fantastic.
yeah,
We tend to miss out down here, especially in the south of Australia. We miss a lot of the really good meteor showers that you tend to get better in the northern hemisphere.
yeah.
Probably the biggest one here is the Geminids in December, but even that isn't great here.
No.
Um,
Well, there's
so
Gemini.
much so,
Gemini's above Orion. I
yeah,
don't know where Orion is in your skies. Is it in the north?
yeah. Well,
I think upside down.
Orion in our sky here is in the north, and it's upside down. But Gemini is pretty low down in the sky all the time.
Yeah. Right.
So, but the Perseids and a few of the other meteor showers that you get
Yeah, they're all
reasonable
north. They all
amount.
come from north directions, don't they?
Yeah, yeah, we don't
Oh,
get
that's
any of those
unfortunate.
very well, and I've wasted hours and hours out waiting for meteor showers, and for very
Yeah.
little
Oh, bless.
success rate.
Jeez,
Yeah,
oh. Yeah. Well, yes. I've been down south, obviously, for you guys. It's good for, say, planetary photography because you're, well, ecliptic is pretty much straight overhead. So you get
yeah,
in, like, we have to see planets through a lot of atmosphere, which isn't the best.
yeah.
But you can
That's
see
true.
pretty much. Yeah. Have you ever dabbled in planetary photography at all?
Um, Not so much.
Yeah.
I've done a little bit of visual photography.
Yeah.
Visual observing.
Mm.
But I've only got a small refractor telescope, and I've got a few telephoto lenses, but not long enough to shoot planets.
Yeah.
Moon shots, yes, but it's probably
Yeah.
something that I like the results that people get, but I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole just yet and invest in a lot of extra gear.
Yeah. It's
I do have a
expensive.
lot of friends I have a lot of friends who are into full blown astrophotography with long focal length telescopes and astro cameras and things like that. But at this stage, it's not something I want to do. I really appreciate the landscape aspect of astrophotography, and that's
Yeah.
what I want to do.
I think obviously landscape astrophotographers share the same passion. I think I did. As anyone gets into it, get a telescope, point at the moon, point at the planets and stuff. Then I saw like people look like online doing landscape photography, and it's better traveling about, seeing the landscape rather than just sitting in your back garden and doing that. We'll do that when we're pensioners and stuff. It's the best way. But just
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
it's good traveling about, I think, and seeing different landscapes. Have you ever thought about going abroad, traveling about?
Well, I actually did a trip to the UK in 2019, and it was interesting. I went to England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. I
Oh, did
went
you?
to
You've been
all
to
of those
Scotland? Oh,
places.
nice.
Yeah, I've been to Scotland, and actually, a funny story. I was at Fort William, the
Hey,
town near
yay,
Glencoe,
good. Yep.
and I was lined up at a cafe there to order some lunch. And anyway, I just ordered. And the guy next to me said, "Excuse me, are you Australian?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm Australian." I thought, well, he's just heard me order my lunch, and then he said, "Oh, is your name Richard?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you take photos of the Milky Way and the
Oh
night
wow.
sky?" And yeah. He said, "I follow you on YouTube." So there's this guy.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's not a big town, as you know, and it's
No.
probably 10,000 kilometers away from where I live. But I met this guy. He was from England, and he was going to the Isle of Skye to do some photography. So that
Oh,
was good.
amazing.
But
Yeah.
I did enjoy Scotland. Probably out of all the places I went to on that trip, I enjoyed Scotland the most. Just the mountains and the landscape is absolutely beautiful. But I didn't do any night photography. In fact, there wasn't very many nights where it was clear in any of that trip.
Yeah. Welcome to Scotland.
And the other part of particularly in the English side and Wales, and it was just light pollution everywhere. It was so. But I did enjoy it. It was not meant to be a trip where I was taking a heap of photos. I was there on a holiday, and I enjoyed. There's a few places I'd love to shoot at, like for example, over in Ireland, the Giant's Causeway. I found that fascinating.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'd love to visit that.
The only problem was there was about 10,000 tourists there when I was there. I mean, I was one of them as well, but I can imagine at night time it would be spectacular.
Yeah, well, it's good that you kind of touched on about light pollution in Scotland and England. I mean, that's why I think Scotland's so good, and there's not enough praise about Scotland, because anywhere in the UK it's quite heavily light polluted and stuff. But Scotland, you go above, like, say, the cities, Glasgow, Edinburgh sort of way, and it's just the Highlands. So hopefully, well, I'm sure you've travelled through all the mountains and stuff. And it's beautiful. It's just country mountains and stuff, and we've got some amazing dark skies. Like, if you look at light pollution maps in Europe and stuff, you've just got us away in the corner with no light pollution up in Scotland. So we really do have really good dark skies, and we've got all these Northern Lights things and stuff like that. So I think that's what
absolutely.
Scotland's really, really good, and it's just underappreciated. No one really knows about it somehow. Don't know why.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing that I loved about Scotland was just the beauty of the landscape. It is rugged, and there's lots of lakes and lots of mountains and
lochs.
And the Isle of Skye is just breathtaking. I really enjoyed that little.
Oh, you went up there, yeah. Yeah, so did you just go up the west coast? That's through like Glencoe. Did you go from like Glasgow up?
Yes, and went back through Edinburgh.
All right, Edinburgh. Okay, yeah. That west coast, it's spectacular. Isle of Skye is amazing. I've never been there a few times. I've not took my camera, so one day hopefully. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm being stupid asking this. We get noctilucent cloud. Oh well, you don't get dark twilight sky, so that's stupid. I was going to say noctilucent clouds are in the southern hemisphere. I don't know. Are they?
I've never seen them. I know what they are. I've never seen them here in Australia, but they might be somewhere, but not where I live.
No. If you don't get twilight sky, I think they would be over the southern pole, but you'd have to go probably quite far south to see them. Obviously, you've touched on you do a lot of YouTube and stuff. How did you come about starting that? And obviously, a lot of work. I think every astro vlogger sort of thing can appreciate how hard it is sometimes to vlog at night, and it's a lot of dedication and stuff. So, how did that come about?
Well, actually, I've done video and photography as a profession for probably 25 years or more. So that's how it sort of started. I started making YouTube just to document some of the tutorial type stuff that I was doing, and then also some of the trips I was doing. And I really enjoy making videos, but the biggest challenge was actually because all the years that I'd worked doing video production, I was always behind the camera. I'd never been in front of the camera. So the biggest challenge is actually being the talent, as they call it, in front of the camera and having to do it all yourself. So, you don't have a crew, you don't have anyone to help you. You set it all up yourself, and you've got to go and pick the camera up and walk around, and as you know, and so it's time consuming, but I do actually enjoy making the videos. One of the traps though with YouTube is that you tend to find that you rarely have a photography trip out where you don't make a video, because you're always looking for content. And so it can be one of those situations where you're you don't necessarily go out just to enjoy taking photos anymore, because you're always making videos about that trip. So that's one of the things that I've struggled with, and I've had to try and come to terms with that. And YouTube is very fickle. It's very hard to be extremely successful, especially in photography, because there are some very successful photography YouTube channels out there, but they're reasonably few and far between. And certain other types of genres of YouTube are very, very big channels, gaming and fashion and all these other stuff, but not necessarily what we do. But I enjoy doing it, and I love the interaction with the community.
No, it is great. It's good to capture memories and stuff like that, but it's good that, like you said, how it's very time consuming and always thinking of content. I remember, it was a good few months ago now, I got this dwarf telescope to review like under the stars, and like the whole night I was just doing like videos and doing this content for someone. I'm like, hold on, I need to enjoy this night myself and actually like look at the stars, because it's sometimes some nights you're like, I'm literally working this whole night. It doesn't feel like a night kind of. Obviously, we enjoy it, but you want to kind of enjoy it yourself, not you're constantly just going, right, okay, looking at through a camera. So there's a few nights I think you need to do step back and just start to enjoy it again, because it's annoying just doing content from dusk till dawn. Which is quite annoying.
And I think one of the challenges that we have. So for me, for example, I'm a full-time photographer. I don't have another job, so it's really hard to draw the line between what is a job and what is a pastime that you really enjoy doing. And YouTube is one of those things where it's hard to draw the line and say, well, I'm doing this because I enjoy it, or am I doing it because I have to keep up content? And we have to keep asking ourselves the question, why do we do this? I think that's the most important question to ask. And once we establish why we do it, then we've got to work out how often we can actually handle doing it, because, as you know, it can really drain your batteries.
I can imagine. It's obviously it's your livelihood. It's more way more stressful, because you won't be able to like switch off. It's good for normal people that can just have their life during the day and then do a bit of astrophotography in the evening. But it's constant. And obviously you do like workshops and stuff. Is that enjoyable? Is that easy enough to plan with the weather? Because I know it's quite hard.
Well, I've been doing those for not far off 10 years, and it's they've been very good. We predominantly have a pretty a good climate. So I pretty much run them at the same place. So I go to a farm location away from any towns, and people stay. So we look after them, we feed them, and they sleep, and we have 2 nights generally. And it's very rare that you have 2 nights in a row where there's no stars at all. It's happened, but not very often. Usually you get a little bit of a clear break somewhere in the time you're there. And we talk a lot, and we have a lot of fun, and people travel from all over the place. I've had people from every state in Australia, some from overseas as well. And it's something that I've been doing a long time, and I've tried to simplify it as much as possible, not put too much pressure on myself. But I do work pretty hard, because there's a lot to fit into a space of time that we have. And I tend to often talk too much. I lose my voice and things like that. So I've just got to pace myself with those. But I've been doing those for a long time, and I've met a lot of people through that, which has been fantastic.
No, I'm sure you've made some great connections. That's a good thing with astrophotography. It's a good wee community sort of thing. And obviously photographers are always very nice photographers. You'll always meet good people, and they'll share stories, things like that. Which is awesome. You also do this is one thing I wanted to ask you. I've seen your videos on prints and stuff. So I've tried to print some of my work out, and it's sometimes really hard for colours and stuff. Printing out like Northern Lights when green seems to go horribly wrong sometimes. How do you get along with printing and stuff? Do you do your own printing?
Well, no, I don't do my own print. I send them off to a lab, but typically most of the images that we are shooting are quite dark, and they've got lots of black in them, or dark greys, and black is a hard color to print to get it to look right. Often they come out really muddy grey color, dirty, if you like, especially high ISO images. So I tend to brighten them up more than I would normally to send off to print. But I don't have any secrets. I don't consider myself an expert printer by any stretch of the imagination. I know what you're saying about the color. I think it comes down to the print lab that you send them to, and them having the decent printers and good paper that you want to use. But I've done a lot of printing. I've done a lot of exhibitions as well, where I've actually printed and framed up a lot of work, and so I've learned, I guess, once you find a printer that you're happy with, that does good work, pretty much stick to that lab, because
I suppose it's all trial and error. Try that one, didn't work. Try that one. It's literally just cutting them off slowly, and then you finally find what works for you.
I have found canvas printing to be very difficult, but I did find that there's a guy locally not far from me here who does really good canvas prints. So I have got some of those in the last 18 months or so, where I've printed on canvas, because before that, a lot of canvas prints that I got were they just didn't look right. The print on the canvas itself, the surface of the canvas was too rough or something, and they just didn't look right to me. But so look, printing is an art form, and there's a lot of people out there who are very knowledgeable on the subject. I don't really think I'm knowledgeable. I've just tried a few things and ended up with a printer that I'm happy with.
Experience is worth more than anything, really, isn't it? It's just try different printers. I've tried printing a few things. I've got a big landscape picture of myself and my partner under the Northern Lights, and I was like, right, I wanted to get this on a huge big canvas. So I sent it off, and it was quite a lot of money. I'm like, hopefully this turns out well, and thankfully it turned out like the best canvas I've ever printed, which is good. So it's good when you see your artwork like up on the wall. It's different. It kind of completes the image rather than just, I don't know, share it on social media and then it just sticks in a hard drive. I think there was I can't remember what photographer put a video out, and they're just like, so why are we taking pictures? We take a picture and then it just stays in a hard drive. What's the point? Just, it's good to kind of get it out there and stuff like that. Definitely.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we live in a world where everything is quick, come and go. You look at it once and it's gone. You know, we don't re-look at things. And I think you're right, having a print, or even the old-fashioned photo book where people go on a holiday or something and print out a book. I think there's a time and a place for that. And especially when you want to admire something you did in the times past, then you can look at your images and say, oh, gee, I took that picture 5 years ago and I still like it today. It means something to me. And and it's a good way of sharing with other people. I mean, if you've got an image printed up on your wall or your canvas or whatever, people walk into your house and they say, oh, look at that. Wow, where is that? And, you know, you can't beat that.
Yeah, no, it's a good conversation starter as well sometimes, isn't it? It's brilliant.
Yeah.
One thing, I'm talking about astrophotography, I've not even asked anything about your equipment. What sort of equipment do you use? And lenses and stuff. I've seen you've done a few lens reviews and stuff. So what's your favourite, your go-to?
Well, I've used a lot of different brands over the years, but currently I'm using the Nikon Z series cameras.
That's really good. Yeah. Is that the mirrorless one?
Yeah, they're mirrorless. I use a Sony A7S III for all my videos, which is a fantastic camera for low light video. But for all my stills, I tend to use
Sony A7S. That's the one I use.
Okay, so
it's the rookie one, the baby one.
They're very good.
Brilliant for low light, as you said.
I tend to use with the Nikon cameras, I use a 20mm is my favorite focal length. So I have a 20mm, a 35mm, a 50mm, and an 85mm prime. They're all f1.8. I have a 14 to 24 f2.8. And I've got a 15mm f2, which is a Laowa lens, but I typically only use that for time lapse. So I don't shoot ultra wide very often in photography with my under 20mm. 20mm is my favorite. I like that because of a little bit less distortion than you get at 14. The Z6 camera is what I use, and it's a 24 megapixel camera. It's fantastic in high ISO. It's an ISO invariant camera.
It's a nice camera. It looks really, really good.
Yeah, it has a Sony sensor in it, so it's probably very similar to the A7 series, the A7 III, for example, A7 IV. People on my workshops have all sorts of different cameras, and I get to play with a lot of different cameras, and they're all good. It doesn't matter what brand. All of the newer cameras in particular are very, very good. Canon cameras are good, but the new RF lenses, if you like, they're quite expensive, and they haven't opened up their lens mount to very many third-party manufacturers at this point in time. So I guess Sony's got the biggest lens range, and I've used a few Tamron lenses with the Sony mount, and they're very good, and certainly the Sigma Art series lenses are excellent as well.
Yeah,
very good.
I remember watching one of your reviews, and one of my favorite lenses is the Samyang, is it the Rokinon, maybe down your area, the Rokinon?
Yeah. No, it's the Samyang, yeah.
Samyang, the 14mm 22. And I remember, I think you said in one of them, the distortion is absolutely horrible. And I will support that. The distortion is pretty horrific. It's good for, like, say, a big Northern Lights picture or stuff. But I do always pretty much crop in a good 10-15% of an image, because it does distort a lot. But I remember you saying that, and I'm like, it is bad distortion. But for your sort of stuff, you get really good detail, so you're probably zooming in a wee bit more. 14mm is a bit too wide for you.
Yeah. I think it just depends what you're shooting. I mean, for example, some things, it doesn't matter if they distort so much, like trees, for example. They're not straight mostly. They've got branches coming out. But if you shoot a building with straight walls, then and they start leaning over on funny angles, it just doesn't look right.
No, 100% does not. Remember, going to Norway and try and get everything in, and then that you see a wee hut in the edge just kind of all warped up, and you're like, oh god, you just have to crop it out and stuff. But good. What's your so your kind of top sort of astro memories? Any nights that come to mind when you think, oh, that was a good night? What's your kind of top couple?
Well, I've done a lot over the years, and I mean, definitely that big Aurora I saw in Tasmania 2 years ago was very special, because I don't see them like that very often. In fact, that's the only really big Aurora I've ever seen in that way. I've seen other ones which are good but not as bright, because I was further south. I think for me, having like I said, like we were talking about before about printing, I've got a lot of pictures printed up. I'm looking at some in my office here, and I look at these every day, and it takes me back to those times. And people say to me, "What's your favorite image?" And it's a bit like the question you asked me then. I mean, my favorite image changes all the time, because 1 minute that one was my favorite, then hang on, that one's my favorite. And typically it's not the image itself that makes it a favorite. It's the experience of being there in that particular spot. And I do have a few favorite places I like to revisit, and I go back to a lot. And maybe it's not the image that's the favorite, but it's the location that's the favorite. So, that could have something to do with it. So, I mean, I've had lots of experiences. I do, because I run a lot of night photography workshops with people, I like to be out there by myself. And when I'm out by myself, I enjoy it more. And that's not to say
it's a
that
good thing to be alone for.
It's not that I don't enjoy it with other people. It's just that tends to mean I'm thinking more about them than I am about myself. And it's just nice to have that flexibility to be able to just do what I want and shoot something and try something special and try something new. For example, the last 2 years, I've been using a star tracker quite a lot. Prior to that, I had a star tracker, but I rarely used it. So I think one of the important things is to try and keep pushing yourself. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing this. You need to keep trying new things and trying a new technique or something that you haven't really done before, and maybe identify something that you're not so good at and see if you can have a go at that. And certainly with astro landscape photography, editing is one of the things that everybody needs to practice and work on, because that's
another 50% of the image. It's out in the field and it's processing 100%.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
do you do a lot of editing and stuff?
Um, well, I try to shoot in the field with editing in mind, and that's one of the big things that I'm always running through my brain when I'm out there shooting. I think, now, how am I going to edit this picture? What's my mindset here? Because what I see a lot is for people going out shooting, and this is not just night photography; it's every type of photography. And they will say, "Oh, it doesn't matter. I'll fix that. I'll take out that thing in Photoshop, or I'll fix it up later." And my mindset is, no, I'm not going to fix it later. I'm going to fix it now. I'm just going to move my camera or do whatever I have to do to get it where I want it, and try and get the focus right and all the other things that you have to do whilst you're out there in the field. And then the edit is simplified to a large degree. And I think that's a big plus, because it's already hard enough doing the post-processing later on.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah. What do you use for editing stuff? Are you just a Lightroom Photoshop guy, or is there any other?
Yeah, I use Lightroom and Photoshop primarily. I really enjoy Lightroom. I think I've been using it for years with all sorts of other photography. Photoshop, I use for things that Lightroom can't do, and there's a lot of blending and so forth.
Yeah.
I do use a few plugins to, like, I use Topaz Denoise, for example, on a lot of images, and I also use Star Exterminator, which is a fantastic program for helping edit tracked sky shots, for example. And there's probably a few other little plugins, but generally I try to keep it simple if I can.
Yeah.
As I said, shoot to edit. If you're thinking of how you're going to edit when you're shooting, it comes back and you think, yep, I can try and get it as best as I can in the camera.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a very good tip. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, saves a lot of work when you get back home, because when you get back home, you'll have all the images, all the footage for a YouTube video. You probably will take a good few days getting through everything, because YouTube
Yeah.
videos take ages to edit through. They
Yeah.
take quite a while
Yeah.
doing
Well,
that. Yeah.
yeah. And with YouTube, one of the big problems over the years, I learned this years ago, with video production, is audio. You got to get good audio, because if you got wind blowing all over the place and things like that, nobody wants to listen to that. They'll watch a blurry video, or they'll watch a video that there's too much movement. But if it doesn't sound good, they'll turn off really quickly.
Yeah. That's very true. Yeah, I've got a good, I don't know, it's kind of a cheap mic. It just goes in the camera, but it hears me from a mile away, which is really good. But yeah, no, you do need good audio, because it's always windy. It seems to be at night, and sometimes, yeah. What's your anything in the future, just to wrap things up? What's your future plans? Are you going to travel more, or are you just going to? Well, obviously you're quite tied, obviously, to your area because it's your job and stuff and workshops. You got anything planned in the future?
Nothing big or outlandish. I might travel a bit more. I don't know yet. Obviously, when COVID hit, it stopped everybody doing everything for probably 3 years, and getting back into that now. But look, I'm reasonably content with where I am. I mean, there's a lot of places I'd like to visit and see, but as far as clear night skies, I don't have to go very far to find those, because they're here where I am now. And there's a lot of places in Australia where I haven't visited as well. So
Yeah.
I
Fair
don't
enough.
know.
Yeah. Have you got any like solar eclipse coming up? Everyone seems to, every time I ask them what's your like the goal, everyone's solar eclipse. I've never witnessed one. Have you ever witnessed one, or you don't
Yeah,
know if you've got
I
any?
did. I have witnessed a full solar eclipse when I was a kid, years and years ago. I had a telescope, and I looked at it through the telescope with a sun filter, and it was amazing. But I've never actually photographed one. There was one only a month or so ago in Western Australia, which is miles away from where I live. It's probably something lunar. We see a lot of lunar eclipses, so the blood moon and things like that, and they're quite good.
Yeah. Yeah, they're beautiful. I
But I
love
haven't.
them. I've only seen one, but yeah, absolutely beautiful. I think you did a
Yeah,
video a few probably months ago now. You were chasing one, but I think the cloud got in the way or stuff. Was it that
yeah,
one?
true.
Yeah. Gosh.
That's right. That was back in, I think, November, end of last year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Getting a lunar eclipse with a big Milky Way and stuff would be absolutely phenomenal, I would think. Yeah. But yeah. And is there anything hugely coming up this year in Australia, lunar eclipse wise, solar eclipse wise?
No,
No.
well, I don't. To be honest, I don't know. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah.
We've had at least one a year for the
Mhm.
last 6 or 8 years, and one year I think it was 2015 or 2016. There was about three in that one year, so it was quite amazing.
Yeah. No, we don't get them a lot here. I think our next total solar eclipse kind of goes around the UK, which is
Yeah,
awesome. So I think we get about 80% of it, which will be awesome. But yeah, I think it seems to be like the Southern Hemisphere gets more of these cool events. We'll get the meteor showers, like, as we said, but you get all these cool solar eclipses and
yeah.
stuff.
Well, we missed out on the comet. What was it?
Oh,
The
Neowise.
big one, Neowise. We didn't. I didn't see
Yeah.
that at all. So
Oh, yeah,
that was
true, because that was
amazing.
really
All the
north.
pictures.
Yeah, it was in the northern skies, isn't it? Oh,
Yeah,
God. We were a bit too bright for it. Like, if you're in England, it was quite good. You got a wee bit of the dark, but we had such, it was height of summer it came, and it was still
yeah,
twilight. So we could get it, but we couldn't get any detail on it. It was just kind of a fuzzy
yeah,
thing. It's cool to see. You could see it with the
yeah,
naked eye. Yeah, you missed out on that.
yeah,
Gosh. Did you not? There was another one, the green comet. No, that was above the cloud. You
yeah,
probably wouldn't have seen that. Or did no,
yeah,
no, it
yeah.
kind of
No,
came across.
that was, yeah, but it was mainly in the northern hemisphere when it was close to Earth, and when it was going
Yeah,
away, it was a little bit there in the evening, just
yeah,
after sunset. But there was Comet Lovejoy a couple of years ago, I think, but
yep.
that wasn't bright here either. So yeah,
Yeah.
we haven't had a good run with comets.
Oh man. Oh well. You'll just have to stick with the Milky Way overhead. That'll be
Yeah,
beautiful
well, I'll
seeing that.
take that any day. Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. One day I hope to photograph that. So in the plans. But yeah, I think that's
yeah.
about it. Yeah. Thank you very much for your
Okay,
time. Really do appreciate it,
that's
and it's
okay.
great to hear all your stories from down under.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a good place to shoot, but I admire your videos too because you get out there and I've seen you battling midges and things like that.
Oh,
So
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
it's
I actually
horrible.
got attacked by them once here, so I know what they're like.
Yeah, they're
Not
just
good.
absolutely horrid. No, they're horrid. Makes any sort of night challenging. Yeah. No, thank you very, very much. Thank you.
No, that's okay. I appreciate the invite to come on your channel.